Hello folks, Darrel Smith from South Dakota. I'm going to try to tell you another story today. The name of the story is Pete and Old Blue. A friend of mine, when I told him I was going to write about Pete and Old Blue, said, I don't know if you need to tell a story about your farm dogs. Well, this is not about farm dogs. I was an aviator, and I want to tell you this story is about my early life on the farm and my first step as becoming an aviator. There's a bunch of types of aviators. There's the fighter pilot who mans his F-18 with all the bombs and armament on it and is launched off the ship to do combat. There's the recreational pilot who flies the Piper Cub type airplane, and they land and take off on grass strips. There are women pilots, a lot of them now. When I first started with the airline, there was none, and then they started coming in. There's lots of female pilots now. I had the opportunity and the honor of working with one of our early I was an instructor of early female pilots, and I wrote a story about it, and I'll tell you about that later. And then there's the grizzled old captain with his weathered hand pushes the thrust levers forward on a Boeing 747. The 200,000 pounds of thrust start this 800,000 pound aircraft on a long trip that will probably end in some foreign country. All of these pilots have stories that should be told. Very few of them actually put it on paper. So my effort here is to record some of the stories of my life. I lived, my early life, I lived on a small farm in West Tennessee. We were poor. It was a place of work. There was always more work than we had personnel to do it. It was a study in selective neglect. You just did what you had to do, and the rest of the work went lacking. That situation brought on the ability or not ability, brought on sharecropping. Sharecropping is where the landowner owned the land, but the sharecropper furnished the labor. That's how I met Pete. Pete Macklin, a black man, lived about 3 miles from my dad's farm. He was a good man, had a large family, and a good worker. On weekdays, he had a car. On weekdays, he showed up in his car, and he and his family worked in the fields on his crops. However, on the weekends, he was the Reverend Macklin, and that he was the pastor for a church near Millington, Tennessee, which is about 4 or 5 miles away. He was a good man, honest. I liked him. I considered him a friend, even though I was very young, and he was much older. I don't know their background. I was only 6 years old and never even considered asking where they came from, what their life had been like. On our farm, my dad had a team of mules that were all things bad. They were outlaws. They were hard to harness. They were nervous. They would run away whenever chance they got, and they could jump any fence. Nobody wanted to deal with a spare. Pete finally said, I'll work with them. It was like magic. It was almost impossible to believe. In a very short period of time, these these wild mules turned into like puppies. Pete could go take them to and from the fields without even a lead rope, and they would follow him. To stop, he would say, "Whoa." And to start again, he'd say, "Come on." And if he left them alone, they would stand quietly until he returned. They seemed to love him. He was like an early day horse whisperer. I guess it would be mule whisperer. Well, life moved on, and I went off to college with playing football to pay my way. During college, I joined the Marine Corps and joined the PLC program, Platoon Leaders Class. And the deal was, if I did their training in two different summers, and got a degree, I would be designated a second lieutenant in the U.S. Marine Corps. As we were leaving the farm, Glenda and I had just been married. There was a lot of activity around as we packed our car and loaded things and said goodbye and that sort of thing. Pete was there. He just kind of stayed around the side lines. He was quiet. He finally took my arm and led me aside. And he looked me in the eye and said, "You're going out into a big world. There will be times when things will get really difficult. When those times come, and they will, and you don't feel like you have the strength to carry on, it's okay. Just come on back to the farm. Old Blue will be hooked to the plow waiting on you." To me, that meant, don't come back to the farm. There's nothing here for you. Well, many times did get hard, and it would have been much easier just to quit and walk away. But every time I thought of Pete and Old Blue, I had to smile, and I pressed on always. I will always remember what Pete had to say. I never talked to him again, and Old Blue died. But I'll remember Pete and Old Blue. Thank you.